On this day, the Lord has made, in the year 1995, in the city of Springfield, Illinois, the 136-year-old Saints Peter and Paul's Catholic Parish lies nestled in the shadow of the place it helped found, St. John's Hospital. In 1872, at Pastor Father Levy's suggestion, the Bishop of Alton invited the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis to emigrate from Munster, Germany. They established themselves in the Alton Diocese with Springfield as their first foundation, and where in 1875 they started St. John's Hospital.
But this story is not about St. John's. It is about a German Catholic parish that is steeped in history and legend, which began in the early 1800s. It is about a parish that has a church that is the oldest Catholic church still in use in the city of Springfield. In 1838, prior to Springfield being incorporated as a city, Springfield Catholic families were being attended by Father George Hamilton from Alton. He became the first resident pastor, and he made the first attempt to build a church. But it wasn't until 1848, 8 years after Springfield became a city, that the new pastor, Father Philip Conlon, succeeded in erecting the first Catholic church building in Springfield.
This primitive 27-foot by 60-foot small-framed structure stood on the south side of Adams Street between 8th and 9th Streets. It was dedicated to and called St. John the Baptist Church, which later became Saints Peter and Paul's in 1859. During the 1840s, historians recount that the parish was composed of English-speaking Irish Catholics and German-speaking Catholics. As the parish grew to almost 400 families, the need grew to build a larger church. The English-speaking parishioners erected a new and larger church on the corner of 7th and Monroe Streets, which they named Blessed Virgin Mary Immaculate, or as it was commonly called, St. Mary's. It was completed in 1859. In the meantime, the German-speaking members organized a new congregation in 1858 and purchased sole interest in the old St. John's Church. They renamed it Saints Peter and Paul's, forming the second Catholic congregation to be organized in Springfield.
They immediately petitioned for a German-speaking priest, and in the fall of 1858, Bishop Juncker sent a young man of their own nationality, Father John Jansen of Kevelaar, Germany. On December 12, 1858, he recorded the first baptismal entry of Henry Clayholt. He also recorded 64 members of his flock in 1859. Father William Bush from Westphalia, Germany, became pastor in 1863. The German Catholics had increased to such an extent that the little frame church on Adams Street proved inadequate. Father Bush and his flock resolved to build a new church. They purchased 1 lot and a half from the Ursuline sisters at the corner of 6th and Reynolds Streets. Construction began in April, and the cornerstone was laid September 27, 1865. And September 30th, 1866, marked the completion of the building with the celebration of the First Holy Mass.
Father Gerhard Luken of Oldenburg, Germany, was appointed pastor in 1867 and served until 1875. He finished decorating the church interior, including the wood-carved statues of St. John the Baptist and Mary Magdalene, which were transferred from Old St. John's. A 2-story brick building, which still exists, was added to the rear of the church in 1867. This served as the school until the new and larger school was built in 1889. The front half of the existing rectory was built in the fall of 1870.
Father Gerhard Levy became pastor in 1875. His attention was first given to repainting the church interior, and in 1881, he had 2 new side altars installed. Father Levy, who was the spiritual director for the Hospital Sisters of St. Francis while in Germany, suggested that Bishop Baltus invite the sisters to emigrate from Munster, Germany, to establish themselves in the Alton Diocese. They did so, and Springfield became their first foundation. Thus, through their efforts and labors, St. John's Hospital came into being. Father Levy resigned his pastorate in 1882. Father Michael Weiss was appointed pastor and functioned until 1887. During his tenure, he bought the balance of the half block along 6th Street and saw the first assistant pastor, Father Charles Krukenberg, arrive in 1883. Father Krukenberg left in 1884 to become the founder and first pastor of Sacred Heart Parish, located at the corner of 12th and Lawrence. Saints Peter and Paul's Parish gave a bell they had blessed as Michael to Sacred Heart Parish when they built their new church in 1895. It is still in use today with an electronic clapper.
The original edifice of Saints Peter's and Paul's Church, which was never completed, was done by Father Weiss in 1884. He extended the tower brickwork to its proper height, and a slate-covered belfry with a golden cross was placed on it. A new altar was installed in 1886 to harmonize with the side altars installed in 1881. Also, a hot air furnace was installed beneath the church to replace the two stoves which had proven to be unsatisfactory. Father Weiss left in 1887, replaced for a short time by Father Hinson, who left to become director of St. John's Hospital.
Father Adam Penarts was appointed pastor and served from 1887 until 1896. Under him, the number of parish families increased to 360, with 320 children in school. The most notable event in 1888 for Saints Peter and Paul's Parish was the start of a new and long-desired school and assembly hall at the corner of 6th and Mason Streets. It cost $12,817 and was completed in 1889. Over the years, it was often affectionately referred to as the Old Deutsche Pen.
In 1890, a new communion railing was installed in the church, and during this period, 1890 to 1896, Saints Peter and Paul's had a number of assistants: Father Jaley, Michael, Forrester, Schoenlaw, Sturm, Wand, and Straub. Father Lupert Riesen took charge as pastor in 1896, and he served until 1930. He saw the parish grow and prosper through good and difficult times in his 34 years of service. He saw
the formation of a German Catholic Cemetery Association in 1900, which later became Calvary Cemetery.
A new central boiler system for all parish buildings in 1901.
A sermon preached in English for the first time in 1907.
A school addition in 1913.
Curtailment of the use of German and German traditions in 1914.
Removal of the church steeple in 1918.
Interior of the church redecorated in 1922.
Ordination of 4 priest sons. Father Max Philip, 1900, son of Max and Margaret Philip. Father John B. Franz, 1920, son of Mr. and Mrs. Fred Franz. Father Riesen baptized Father Franz and saw him become a bishop. Bishop Franz died July 3, 1992, at the age of 95. Father Edward J. Weisenberg, 1926, son of Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Weisenberg, and Father Ralph Brisk, 1929, son of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Brisk.
In June 1908, Father Louis Hufker came to assist Father Riesen at Saints Peter and Paul's Parish as a newly ordained priest, succeeding Assistant Father Oscar Wernet. He remained for 19 years and was one of the longest-serving assistants. In 1927, Father Hufker was called to serve as the pastor of the newly built Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Springfield.
Father Riesen's retirement in 1930 after 34 years as pastor of Saints Peter and Paul's brought the appointment of the first American-born pastor, Father Linus George Kipping. Born in Banner, Missouri in 1884, Father Kipping studied in St. Francis Seminary in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Mount St. Mary Seminary in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was ordained in 1909 and immediately began serving in the Alton, now Springfield Diocese, as assistant chaplain at St. John's Hospital in Springfield. He began a 20-year assistant and pastoral journey in 1910 to parishes throughout the diocese, and on September 13, 1930, he was appointed pastor of Saints Peter and Paul's. Father Kipping celebrated his Golden Jubilee and became a Monsignor in 1959. The same year, Saints Peter and Paul's Parish celebrated its 100th year. During his 30 years, Monsignor Kipping guided first a growing, then a declining parish through a depression with the closing of factories and the failing of many banks. Although economic, social, and political upheavals persisted, he continued to guide his parish and church as it progressed both spiritually and materially. Spiritually, during his tenure, 42 boys and girls of the parish entered religious life, 15 as priests, 24 as nuns, and 3 as brothers. Also, upon his death, there were 7 young men studying in various seminaries. Of the priests, 10 celebrated their first Mass at Saints Peter and Paul's during Monsignor Kipping's time as pastor. They are the Reverends Frank Tresh, John Tresh, MM, Frank Harbauer, CSV, Joseph Sandhaus, SVD, Henry J. Schwerner, Henry J. Nodler, Frank Dirksen, Edward Gresh, August Spurl, and Louis Shea. And during his pastorate, there were 1,960 baptisms, 1,498 people received Holy Communion, 1,263 were confirmed, 433 were married, 161 were married in mixed marriages, 306 were converted to Catholicism, and 985 received burial services. Monsignor Kipping saw the 100th anniversary of the parish enter its next century with 345 families and 1,502 members. Materially, in 1932, he began purchasing property on North 7th Street, behind the church and school. In 1953, a new sisters' convent and an adjoining kindergarten were completed. Over the years, Monsignor Kipping continued the tradition of reconditioning and redecorating both the exterior and interior of the church building, culminating in 1948 with a complete new marble sanctuary, altar, communion railing, and statues. And in 1958, new marble statues of Saints Peter and Paul were added, along with new stations of the cross. Over Monsignor Kipping's tenure, he had 9 assistants. They were Fathers Joseph Ball, Ralph S. Guido, Cornelius Horn, James Hughes, Kirsto Jelinek, W. Edwin Bloomfield, Anthony Schmidt, Menard Labaki, and Edward Adamski. In order to raise parish funds and to promote parish involvement, Monsignor Kipping encouraged parish events such as ice cream socials, ham suppers, card parties, bingos, and summer festivals. And of course, the drama club plays, other parish events, and sporting events were always well attended.
On December 4th, 1949, Saints Peter and Paul's held its first post-war ham supper with over 1,000 in attendance. Through the cooperation of the Men's Holy Name Society, the Ladies' Altar Society, and the Mothers Club, the parish was able to continue its annual tradition of having the city's most famous ham supper. Monsignor Kipping died July 19, 1960, at the age of 76. Father Joseph Miller replaced him as pastor in September 1960. Father Miller was ordained in 1936 at the Josephinum Seminary, Worthington, Ohio. He was first assigned as an assistant at St. Mary's in Taylorville before being appointed pastor at St. Elizabeth Church in Marine, Illinois in 1942. Like his predecessor, Father Miller saw Saints Peter and Paul's through first a growing, then a declining parish. Beginning in 1961, with his assistant pastor, Father Martin O'Hara, Father Miller started a building fund to build a new school. The old Deutsche Pen, built in 1889, was overcrowded, outdated, and a fire hazard. In 1962, the property on the southeast corner of 7th and Mason was purchased for $36,000 from St. John's Hospital. Work began on the $300,000 structure in 1964, and the new school was completed in 1965.
The 77-year-old Deutsche Pen was torn down in 1966. Ironically, 100 years before, Father Bush opened the first school in a small frame building just south of the church. Over Father Miller's tenure, besides Father Martin O'Hara, he had the following assistants: Fathers Bernard Kurz, Louis Schlangen, Philip Kraft, Donald Kaufman, Joseph Havey, Chester Fabziak, and Thomas Sullivan. Father Miller saw that the church was touched up and redecorated on the inside and on the outside. A new gas-fired boiler was installed in a newly renovated boiler room where public restrooms were installed for the use of those attending church.
In February 1969, in keeping with the changes from Vatican II, the marble altar was removed from the back wall of the church sanctuary and placed in front where it remains today. The tabernacle was placed on St. Joseph's altar and the communion railing opened. Sadly, 1971 brought the end of teaching school in the parish after 105 continuous years and over 5,000 graduates. The Ursuline sisters, who taught for 87 years, notified Father Miller that they had a shortage of nuns and that they would not be returning next year. The school was closed, and the parish children began attending either St. Joseph's or the cathedral schools, with the parish paying a portion of their tuition.
As for the church, another milestone was reached in 1972, at 106 years of age. It was air-conditioned. 1973 was a good year financially for Saints Peter and Paul's. SIU School of Medicine signed a lease to rent the convent, and the Sangamon Area Special Education District leased the school. In 1975, the Special Education District's lease was not renewed. Instead, SIU's Family Practice Center began occupying a portion of the school, along with another portion used for the Head Start program. During these years, Saints Peter and Paul's was becoming more and more a downtown or inner-city parish with more older people and fewer young families. When Father Sullivan came as assistant in 1978, he started the Over 55 Club, which flourishes today.
Father Miller retired in 1985 after serving for 25 years. Father Frank J. O'Hara was assigned pastor that same year. Father O'Hara was ordained May 23, 1941. He served as an assistant at the cathedral and pastor at St. Denis in Shipman, Illinois, and St. Kevin in East Alton, Illinois, before coming to Saints Peter and Paul's. Father O'Hara continued the tradition of maintaining the parish grounds and buildings. Again, as with his predecessor, he discovered declining parishioner numbers. But twice he was faced with something that none of the 9 prior pastors had ever faced: the possibility of the parish closing. The first threat of closing came in 1991 after the almost totally destructive church fire, which was discovered by Father O'Hara as he entered to prepare for the 5 o'clock Ash Wednesday Mass on the 13th of February. Cause of the fire was a defect in the electrical box in the crawl space under the confessional on the church's south side. While the church was under repair, Saints Peter and Paul's parishioners attended Mass, said by Father O'Hara, in the St. John's Hospital Chapel. This is ironic in that Saints Peter and Paul's helped found St. John's, and now the hospital was able to help them.
The church was repaired, blessed, and reopened on September 21st, 1991. The second time Father O'Hara was faced with the fear of the parish closing was this year, 1995, prior to the diocese realignment of parishes. Despite persistent rumors, though, Bishop Daniel L. Ryan announced Saints Peter and Paul's would not close. And a sigh of relief was heard when Father O'Hara announced to the parish that he would serve Saints Peter and Paul's and its parishioners as long as the bishop wants him to and as long as he is able.
So the parish continues with its 305 families and 617 members in its tradition, in spite of having sold all of its surrounding property to St. John's Hospital on December 1st, 1993. All that remains of the parish is the rectory, built in 1870 with several additions and changes, the boiler room, and the church, built in 1866, with the 2-story school built in 1867 on the back of the church.
Relating the history of Saints Peter and Paul's Parish would not be complete without remembering the Ursuline nuns and their dedicated service for 87 years to the parish and the children of the parish. During those years, there were scores of nuns who worked tirelessly, providing constant, unselfish service as teachers who devoted their lives to God. But there are several nuns who deserve special mention because of their time served and how they touched and influenced the lives of families generation after generation. They are Mother M. Anastasia, served for 46 years from 1887 until 1933. Mother M. Adelaide, served for 41 years from 1922 until 1963. She died September 9, 1963. Mother M. Joseph served for 60 years from 1901 until 1960. She died April 4th, 1963.
Also, mention should be made of the priest sons and the nuns who graduated from Saints Peter and Paul's School. It is difficult to end a story about such a historic church and parish that has thrived and survived for 136 years. It is especially difficult to end and know that so many events, names, and situations have, unintentionally of course, been left out. But it is more important to remember that, through God's help, Saints Peter and Paul's parish, its families, its teachers, its priest sons and nuns, and the 10 pastors it has had during its lifetime, have contributed so much to so many. The founding families would be proud to know that the church and parish have continued for so many years.
Simply look at the record. There has been over 5,000 graduates, 7,982 baptisms, 5,258 First Communions, 4,967 confirmations, 2,343 marriages, and 5,045 burials.
This sketch of historic Saints Peter and Paul's ends by simply saying it is hoped that some means can be found to preserve the church as a historical site. It is realized the church is not about buildings, but about people and God. But since the people provided themselves with a place to serve God for 129 years, it seems appropriate to save the bricks and mortar which have housed so many prayers, masses, and offerings, if it can be preserved. The remaining portion of this video will be devoted to pictures of graduating classes, First Communions, and a whole host of others.
Amen, and God bless.